To understand why a narcissist gets into intimate relationships with what looks like a complete lack of standards or selectivity, we first have to redefine what intimacy actually means to them. If you assume they come to intimacy with the same emotional and psychological lens as someone who can form deep, real bonds, their behavior will never make sense. Their choices will keep looking reckless, harmful, or totally irrational. Here is the basic truth. For a narcissist, physical closeness is rarely about emotional connection, real desire, or shared attraction. It works like a transaction. It is a tool they use to reach a specific goal. Once you see what those goals are, their careless-looking behavior becomes a lot easier to understand, plain and simple. When most people become physically involved with another person, the experience usually has many layers. There is real attraction toward that person, emotional, closeness, or at least a desire to build it, shared vulnerability, mutual pleasure, and the creation of a deeper bond. The person themselves matters. Their personality, presence, and uniqueness are at the center of the experience. But a narcissist, however, comes from an entirely different place. They are searching for something that many different people could give them. They are not focused on you as a unique person. They are focused on what you can offer them in that moment. What they want usually falls into a few key groups: validation, control, emotional regulation, or confirmation of their desirability and influence. Think about how this works in real life. If intimacy is used to get validation, to reassure themselves that they are attractive and desirable, then who the partner is becomes almost irrelevant. The only thing that matters is that someone agreed, someone showed interest, someone found them interesting enough to engage with. The partner could be almost anyone, as long as that person gives them that hit of validation. And if intimacy is used as a way to show control, to prove their ability to seduce, dominate, or access someone's vulnerability, then again, the partner as a person does not matter much. What matters is the feeling of power itself. It is about proving to themselves that they can influence others, sometimes even pushing through another person's boundaries or better judgment. When intimacy is used to calm or manage their inner emotional state, it starts to work like a drug. It gives short-term relief from feelings of emptiness, anxiety, or inner chaos. In that moment, they are not building a relationship with a person any more than someone forms an emotional bond with a pill. They are chasing sensation, distraction, and a brief sense of feeling whole or alive. Anyone who can create that effect may seem good enough. This transactional way of seeing intimacy helps explain something that often deeply confuses partners of narcissists: their shocking lack of. You might discover that your narcissistic partner got involved with someone they described as unattractive, unintelligent, or unimpressive. Naturally, you wonder why they would risk a meaningful relationship for someone who seems less accomplished, appealing, or engaging. But that question assumes they are choosing based on genuine personal preference. In reality, their choices are usually about convenience, opportunity, and whether the other person can meet an immediate emotional need. It is similar to someone who is extremely hungry eating whatever food is there. When the goal is just to fill an inner void, careful preferences quickly disappear. This also explains why narcissists can keep multiple intimate relationships going at the same time without showing clear emotional conflict. For people who can form real attachment, this kind of behavior usually creates emotional and psychological tension. They would struggle to balance their emotional investment, deal with guilt, and sort out conflicting feelings. For the narcissist, that conflict is often missing because real emotional connection is mostly absent. Each partner has a separate job providing a specific type of emotional supply. They can keep these parts of their life separate because they are not emotionally invested in these people as whole human beings. They are relating only to what those people can give them. This transactional view also explains why narcissists may become intimate with people they do not even genuinely like. You might find out they were involved with someone they openly criticized, found annoying, or avoided in normal social settings outside of intimate moments. That can feel totally baffling until you realize they were not relating to the person at all. They were using that person's availability and physical presence to meet a need that had nothing to do with who that person really was. This is a deeply objectifying pattern of interaction, even though narcissists rarely see it that way. They may even convince themselves that they feel attraction or connection in the moment because they have learned how to copy those emotional expressions. But the performance has no real emotional depth. There is very little true concern for the other person's thoughts, feelings, or individuality beyond what that person can offer. In this sense, almost any form of validation is good enough. A narcissist does not need something rare or extraordinary. They will take whatever is easy to get because they are not looking for emotional richness. They are trying to complete a psychological transaction to get something that almost anyone who is available and physically compatible can provide. The individual becomes secondary to the function they serve. When intimacy is detached from real connection, every partner becomes replaceable because the narcissist was never truly searching for a person in the first place. Beyond this, the transactional nature of their intimate experiences shows an even deeper psychological pattern. While intimacy may serve short-term goals, one of its biggest purposes is helping the narcissist collect proof for an ongoing inner story. They are constantly trying to prove to themselves that they are desirable, powerful, and important. Narcissists usually lack a stable inner sense of self-worth. Their self-esteem almost never exists on its own, without outside approval. Instead, they constantly and often desperately try to convince themselves that they are valuable, special, and worthy of attention and admiration. Each intimate encounter becomes evidence that supports this inner argument. This is why the number of partners or experiences often seems wildly important to them, sometimes in ways that look childish or obsessive. They may keep a mental list or casually mention their number of intimate partners with pride. They might stack up these experiences the way other people collect achievements or awards. If you see intimacy as emotional connection, this behavior looks strange and even sad. But when you see it as a way of gathering psychological proof, it starts to make sense. Every person who agrees to be intimate with them becomes evidence. Evidence that they are desirable. Evidence that they have influence. Evidence that they can attract, seduce, and dominate. The experience itself often becomes less important than what it represents in their ongoing attempt to build a sense of personal importance. This is why conquest so often matters more to them than connection. In fact, real connection can get in the way of their goals. Real connection requires vulnerability, emotional give and take, and the risk of being rejected for their true self. Conquest, on the other hand, gives validation without that kind of exposure. The ability to persuade, to overcome resistance, and to successfully seduce gives affirmation without emotional risk. Notice how narcissists often talk about their intimate experiences when they open up. Their descriptions often sound like they are talking about trophies or deals, not meaningful experiences. Phrases like, "I had her," "I sealed the deal," or "I can attract anyone I want," show the real motivation underneath. These encounters are treated as possessions or wins rather than relationships between two people. This is where their indiscriminate behavior becomes especially important. It is not just that any partner will do. The bigger the variety, the higher the number. And the greater the perceived status of their encounters, the stronger their evidence feels. If they can attract people from different backgrounds, looks, or social ions, it reinforces their belief in their broad appeal. They convince themselves their desirability is limitless and not tied to any specific type of person. There is also a compulsive drive behind this pattern, because the narcissist's inner emptiness never really goes away. Their need for validation is rarely satisfied for long. One encounter does not fix their insecurity or answer their doubts about their value. Instead, they feel pushed to seek more experiences. Each encounter gives a brief sense of being desired, powerful, and important. But that feeling fades fast, and then they need another experience to bring it back. This is why narcissists may chase another partner almost immediately after an intimate encounter. It is not always because the last experience lacked pleasure in a normal sense. It is because it could not solve the deeper inner insecurity that drove the behavior. The emptiness returns, self-doubt comes back, and they again run to outside validation for reassurance. Compare this with how people who can form genuine emotional bonds usually experience intimacy. For them, intimacy often creates emotional closeness, fulfillment, and a temporary sense of wholeness that lowers the need to seek validation somewhere else. The experience feeds emotional connection and gives a sense of safety, at least for a while. For the narcissist, though, each encounter is like trying to fill a container with a hidden leak. It may look full for a moment, but the sense of emptiness quickly returns because outside experiences cannot repair the inner damage they are trying to fix. So they stay stuck in a constant cycle of chasing, always trying to confirm their desirability and importance through experiences that never truly satisfy them. This pattern also helps explain why narcissists are often drawn to people who are already in relationships or emotionally unavailable. Successfully seducing someone who is committed to someone else or hard to get gives stronger validation. The challenge makes the conquest feel more valuable. The focus is rarely on the individual person. It is on what winning that person's attention proves about the narcissist's power and appeal. This also explains their persistence. They may spend a lot of time and energy chasing people in ways that seem extreme from the outside. They are not really chasing relationships. There is something deeply tragic about this pattern when you really look at it. The narcissist is trying to get proof of their value and desirability through experiences that cannot ever bring lasting fulfillment. Outside admiration cannot repair an inner lack of stable self-worth. No number of people showing interest can close the hole created by a fragmented sense of self. So they remain trapped in a repetitive, compulsive cycle. They build up experiences that offer short relief but never create real self-confidence. They keep gathering proof that never fully convinces them. The people they become intimate with are rarely experienced as full human beings in the narcissist's mind. Instead, they act as witnesses, sources of validation, or pieces of evidence. Their emotions and individuality often become secondary to the role they play in meeting the narcissist's psychological needs. This is one of the most dehumanizing parts of the narcissist's indiscriminate intimacy. It is not just that they are willing to be intimate with almost anyone. It is that by treating intimacy this way, they fail to create real intimacy with anyone. Every encounter centers on their own emotional needs and their ongoing attempt to confirm their worth through someone else's attention and physical presence. When intimacy becomes a tool for self-validation, every partner becomes evidence, and no partner becomes emotionally real. And there is still a deeper layer under this pattern, beyond validation and psychological proof. It reflects something more instinctive and desperate. The narcissist's deep disconnection from their own physical and emotional self, combined with an inner emptiness that feels overwhelming. To understand this, we have to look at the narcissist's relationship with physical sensation and self-awareness. Many narcissists live in a chronic state of psychological detachment, often called dissociation. This means a break from their true emotions, real identity, and the felt experience of being in their own body. Their psychological setup is built around avoiding contact with an inner self they see as flawed, not enough, or unworthy. But this heavy use of dissociation comes with a huge price. It cuts the narcissist off from the inner sense of truly existing, from feeling fully alive, and from experiencing their own body in a grounded, real way. This creates an emptiness that most people struggle to fully understand. It is not only emotional emptiness, though that is certainly there. It is a deeper existential void, a feeling of not really existing, as if life is being watched through a window instead of lived. The narcissist goes through routines, copies emotions, and performs expected social reactions. Yet under that performance, there is very little real emotional life. This is where physical intimacy becomes important as a temporary coping tool. In brief moments, intimacy can give something the narcissist is desperate for: intense sensations strong enough to cut through dissociation. Physical touch and the powerful stimulation of intimate encounters can create short periods where the narcissist actually feels present. During these moments, they may feel more in their body and briefly aware that they exist. This pattern is similar to how some people rely on extreme physical experiences to feel alive, such as high-risk activities, physical pain, or adrenaline-driven behavior. The intensity breaks through the numbness, offering short-term relief from inner emptiness and creating a passing sense of being real and in the body. Here is the key point. If intimacy is being used as a way to escape inner emptiness, instead of forming emotional connection, then who the partner is becomes irrelevant. The narcissist is not actually seeking a person. They are seeking sensation and experience strong enough to briefly make them feel real. This helps explain something that often deeply shocks partners when they learn the full extent of the narcissist's behavior. Many of these encounters look mechanical and emotionally flat, without real passion or joy. The narcissist may be physically present, but seem distant or emotionally checked out, acting in ways that look more like compulsion than genuine desire. This happens because they are not looking for pleasure in a normal way. They are trying to feel something, any sensation, strong enough to break through the constant numbness created by dissociation. Because of this, the sensation they seek can be created with almost anyone. It does not require emotional attraction, connection, or even basic respect for the other person. This also explains why narcissistic intimate behavior often looks addictive or compulsive. Like any attempt to handle inner pain through outside experiences, it gives temporary relief, but never a permanent solution. The sensation fades fast. Dissociation returns. The emptiness comes back. So the narcissist feels driven to look for another encounter, another brief moment of feeling present, another escape from the painful sense of being disconnected from themselves. There is a deeply tragic side to this pattern when you look at it with some compassion. The narcissist is basically using other people's bodies like a form of self-medication, trying to treat a deep psychological wound with physical stimulation. But this can never truly work, because the real problem is not a lack of stimulation. It is a core disconnection from their true self. And the people involved in these encounters are rarely experienced as real partners in a shared emotional moment. Instead, they become instruments or vehicles the narcissist uses to get a temporary break from inner emptiness. The narcissist may sound affectionate or speak in ways that seem emotionally connected, but inside, they often still feel deeply alone. Even in moments of intense physical closeness, they remain emotionally isolated, focused on their desperate effort to feel real. This also explains why their behavior can look random, impulsive, or even self-destructive. They may seek intimacy at inappropriate times during unstable periods or with people who are clearly unsuitable. This behavior seems irrational if you see it as a search for pleasure or connection, but it makes sense when you see it as an attempt to escape an overwhelming inner state. The compulsive nature of this behavior often gets worse during times of emotional stress. When narcissists face failure, rejection, or anything that threatens their inflated self-image, the inner void feels more intense. Dissociation deepens, and the need for strong sensation grows. This can lead to more reckless, more random, intimate behavior during times of emotional instability. There's also a cycle here that keeps feeding itself. Each impulsive encounter, each random choice, and each moment of using another person as emotional pain relief makes it even harder for the narcissist to form genuine emotional bonds. It strengthens their habit of seeing people as objects instead of individuals with their own inner world. Over time, this makes real connection, which could actually help with their inner emptiness, harder and harder to reach. So the narcissist becomes trapped in a self-created loop. The behaviors they use to escape emptiness actually guarantee that the emptiness stays. They try to feel authentic through encounters that demand emotional distance. They try to escape the inner void through experiences that can only give short-term stimulation, never real fulfillment. Meanwhile, they move through relationships with people who believe they are part of something mutual and meaningful, often not realizing they are being used as temporary emotional relief for someone else's inner crisis. When another person's body becomes a tool for creating a quick sense of self, the specific individual becomes unimportant because the narcissist is not seeking connection. They are trying to escape themselves. Up to this point, we have looked at the narcissist's indiscriminate, intimate behavior from their inner psychological perspective. The transactional nature, the constant search for validation, and the effort to escape emptiness. But there is another darker and or deliberate side that we have to talk about. When a narcissist is in a main relationship, their indiscriminate behavior often acts as a tool of control and emotional devaluation. In fact, the lack of standards makes this behavior even more damaging. It is important to see this clearly because it is one of the most emotionally destructive parts of being involved with a narcissist. The lower their standards seem when they engage with others, the stronger the message they send to their main partner. It quietly says that the partner is not unique, not valued, and easily replaceable. It says that your devotion, your loyalty, and your emotional investment do not matter much to them at all. Think about what happens when you find out your narcissistic partner has been intimate with someone you see as clearly inferior in the very areas that once made you feel special to them. Maybe it is someone you think is less attractive, less successful, less interesting, or missing qualities you believed strengthened your relationship. Your first reaction is often deep confusion. You wonder why they would risk the relationship for someone who seems so obviously less compatible. Why would they risk losing you for someone so unremarkable? But that confusion exists because you are still seeing their behavior through the lens of real attraction or personal preference. You assume their actions show emotional or physical desire. That misunderstanding is exactly what makes their behavior so psychologically harmful. Through their indiscriminate actions, the narcissist sends a brutal message. They show you that you are not unique or irreplaceable. The qualities you thought gave you meaning in the relationship, your emotional depth, your loyalty, your effort, your character, are revealed to have no real weight for them. By showing that they will be intimate with almost anyone, they reinforce the idea that your individual traits never truly mattered. From their point of view, you could easily be swapped out for someone else. This realization can shake you to your core. It hits your sense of importance in the relationship and makes you doubt your own worth. Even worse, it pushes you into a place where you start competing for validation that should never require competition. You are not competing with outstanding people. You are competing with the idea of anyone because your partner has shown you they have almost no standards or meaningful thought about who they become intimate with. The fact that their behavior seems random is not a side effect. It is the very method through which emotional devaluation happens. If the narcissist were involved with someone who seemed truly exceptional, someone widely admired, or uniquely appealing, you might tell yourself they were pulled into something by strong attraction. While still painful, it would at least fit a clear emotional logic. But when they choose someone who seems obviously unsuitable, someone they may even openly insult or treat with contempt, it becomes far more destructive. It shows that their behavior is not about finding someone better. It is about proving that anyone is enough. It says that your individuality and value were illusions and that you are easily replaced. This keeps you in a constant state of insecurity and emotional tension. You never feel safe or sure of your place in the relationship. You cannot trust that your commitment, your appearance, or your achievements give you any real stability. When your partner proves that they can be intimate with anyone, it removes any sense of emotional safety or reassure. Nance. And often narcissists understand the power this gives them, even if not fully consciously. They see that keeping you uncertain and emotionally unsettled makes you easier to control. When you are desperate to prove your worth, you are more likely to accept behavior you would normally reject, hoping your effort will finally make you feel uniquely valued. There is another layer to this manipulation. Their indiscriminate behavior puts you in a no-win situation. If you can tolerate it, your self-respect is damaged. If you confront it, you risk being labeled jealous, controlling, or unstable. The narcissist often twists your natural reaction to betrayal into a flaw in your personality, instead of seeing it as a normal response to their actions. They may brush off your pain by saying things like, "It didn't mean anything," or "You're overreacting." That is especially manipulative because in a limited way, it may be true. Their encounters often do not carry emotional meaning for them, but they use that emotional emptiness as an excuse instead of seeing it as a sign of their own dysfunction. The fact that the encounter did not mean much to them does not lower the level of betrayal. It actually highlights their inability to form real emotional bonds. By saying it meant nothing, they try to minimize the impact while at the same time sending the cruel message that you also mean nothing and are replaceable. You are told you are overreacting to something small, while being forced to face the reality that your place in their life is no more special than anyone else's. The indiscriminate nature of their behavior can also leave you feeling socially alone. When you try to explain the situation to others, it can sound confusing or unbelievable. You might say they got involved with Mion, they themselves called unattractive or unappealing. People who have not dealt with narcissistic dynamics may not understand why this hurts so much. They may not see that the lack of standards is exactly what makes it so dehumanizing. Over time, this behavior often gets worse, especially as your emotional attachment to them grows. Early in the relationship, they might act as if they have high standards or are very selective. But as your emotional investment gets deeper, the real message becomes clearer. Your uniqueness was never real to them. Your positive traits never guaranteed safety. You are as replaceable as anyone else because, in their mind, everyone is interchangeable. This pattern looks like psychological warfare carried out through intimate betrayal. It is especially powerful because most people have a hard time believing that someone would use intimacy itself as a weapon for control and devaluation. Many people want to believe that cheating or betrayal is driven by strong attraction or emotional connection. The cold and random nature of narcissistic betrayal can feel too cruel to fully accept. When they are willing to risk everything for anyone, they are saying you were never truly valued as special. This is not just damage caused by their behavior. It is the message. Now we get to one of the deepest explanations for the narcissist's indiscriminate intimate behavior. Beyond the search for validation, the attempt to avoid emptiness, and the use of intimacy as control. A critical factor is this: narcissists often lack the inner psychological structures needed to create real selectivity in relationships. Seeing this shows just how different their emotional world is compared to someone who can form authentic emotional bonds. This difference becomes clearer when you compare them to people with a fairly stable, integrated sense of self. When most people make choices about intimate relationships, those choices are guided by a complex inner system. Their values shape their behavior, including beliefs about loyalty, commitment, respect, and integrity. Their preferences come not only from physical attraction, but also emotional, mental, and sometimes spiritual compatibility. They think about consequences, how their actions will affect others, and whether those actions fit with the kind of person they want to be. They can feel guilt or shame when they break their own standards or hurt someone important. Most of all, they see the other person as a whole human being with their own emotions, experiences, and dignity. All of these together create what we might call natural selectivity. Most people do not become intimate with just anyone because many inner safeguards shape their decisions. Their values discourage hurtful choices. Their awareness of consequences makes them cautious. Their empathy for others limits impulsive actions. Their true attraction to certain qualities shapes their preferences. Their self-respect and sense of integrity create boundaries that guide their behavior. The narcissist, however, often lacks these inner structures or has them in such weak form that they barely affect behavior. Looking at these missing pieces one by one helps explain why their behavior looks so random. First, think about values. A narcissist's values are usually situational and centered on self-benefit. They may say they believe certain things when it makes them look good, but these beliefs are rarely deep or stable. Without strong internal morals, there is little to stop harmful behavior when no one is watching and there is no clear consequence. Next is genuine preference. It may seem like narcissists have real tastes or clear attraction, but these preferences often change based on what benefits them in a given moment. Without a stable sense of self, their interests shift according to what boosts their image, satisfies a short-term desire, or fits their grandiose view of themselves. Their relationship with consequences is also very different. People with solid self-awareness usually think about how current actions will affect future outcomes and their long-term sense of identity. Narcissists often believe the rules do not apply to them, assume they can twist situations to dodge consequences, or focus so much on immediate gratification that future fallout feels far away and unimportant. To really think about cause and effect, you need a consistent sense of self over time, and narcissists often do not have that. Maybe the most important missing piece is the ability to feel real guilt. Guilt is an internal signal that something you did does not match your values or that you hurt someone you care about. It pushes you to think, adjust, and do better. Narcissists often have a limited ability to feel genuine guilt. When they do feel it, they quickly block it with denial, excuses, or blaming others. Without that inner discomfort of guilt, there is not much driving them to avoid harmful behavior. Their choices become mainly about whether they can get away with it or satisfy their own wants instead of whether their actions are right or wrong. Another huge absence is empathy. Empathy lets you imagine and care about another person's emotional world, even when it does not benefit you. Because narcissists struggle with real empathy, they lack one of the strongest internal forces that usually encourages selectivity in intimate relationships. The idea that their actions might emotionally hurt another person does not strongly guide their choices. When you put all of these missing pieces together, you get someone moving through intimate relationships without the inner guidance that usually promotes thoughtful, selective behavior. Their choices are often based on opportunity, impulse, and short-term gain. There is no strong inner voice saying, even though I could do this, I should not. There is no solid moral framework, no deep empathy, and weak concern for consequences. Nothing strong enough to stop an impulse. This is why trying to appeal to a narcissist's sense of morality, loyalty, or emotional responsibility so often fails. Those appeals assume inner structures that are either missing or too underdeveloped to change behavior in a deep way. Their indiscriminate behavior is not always the result of a clear, conscious choice to be destructive, though it absolutely keeps their cycle going. Instead, it often shows a lack of the inner systems that would normally slow things down and lead to more thoughtful choices. They are missing the internal process that lets a person pause, think, and override an impulse because of personal values, empathy, or awareness of consequences. This explains why logical talks, emotional pleas, or attempts to teach them about the hurt they cause almost never bring lasting change. They might understand what you are saying on an intellectual level and may even say they agree. Boo. Understanding in the head cannot create deep change when the emotional and psychological structures needed for that change are missing. This is like explaining danger to someone who does not have the senses to detect it directly. They may get the idea logically, but without an inner system that actually feels the risk, that knowledge stays in their head and does not guide their actions. Narcissists often move through intimate relationships without a real moral compass, emotional warning signals, or empathic sensitivity, the very things that usually encourage selective and responsible behavior. Instead, their choices are driven by outside factors like opportunity, the chances of avoiding consequences, and the potential for quick gratification, validation, control, or intense sensation. This leads to one of the hardest truths to accept about narcissistic indiscriminate behavior. It is not just behavior chosen even though they know better. It often happens because the inner structures that would usually prevent it are missing or badly damaged. The behavior reflects deep psychological gaps rather than a simple moral failing. Without the internal systems that form conscience, empathy, and self-control, indiscriminate behavior becomes less a carefully weighed choice and more the natural result of those missing safeguards.